As metal is such a male-dominated space, bands with female members are often viewed somewhat as a novelty, especially if all members of the band are female. Another popular novelty in metal? Religious imagery. Marrying the two concepts into a band of ghost-inspired nuns was sure to get people's attention, and it did, being picked up by the social media algorithms immediately. But with everything just a bit too polished from the get-go, a constantly changing lineup, and the band clearly being based on contrivance, Dogma really weren't quite all their online presence portrayed them as. The illusion would all come crashing down in late 2025, when it was revealed the women in the band were merely an image used to sell the music, with its creation and management being developed behind the scenes. The result was members who were exploited, subject to terrible touring conditions, and treated as replaceable pawns, all while lining the pockets of one manipulative man under a facade of feminism. Today I'm going to be discussing Dogma's career path from their confusing origin story to their 2025 controversy, as well as the aftermath. The history of this band is pretty confusing, shout out to Reddit user Biggles79 for compiling a timeline of major events and lineup changes. It was really helpful when putting the script together. Dogma first began to appear online in 2021 with a mostly empty Facebook page consisting of promotional photos, though they wouldn't make their musical debut until a video was released on their official YouTube channel in early 2022. The lineup consisted of 4 South American women, clad in nun attire and face paint, going by the names of Lilith on vocals, Lamia on guitar, Nyx on bass, and Abrahel on drums. These were not the members' real names, but rather characters and roles they would be playing within the band, with the members' true identities remaining anonymous. The band would go on to have multiple lineup changes throughout its duration, with the characters mostly remaining the same. Just to be on the safe side, and out of respect for all of the women involved, I won't be using the real names of any of Dogma's previous members unless they have used their own personal social medias to speak out against the band. The nun attire was highly sexualized, with the entire gimmick being they were satanic lesbian nuns. Because that was definitely a woman's idea, right? The ethos of the band was supposed to be based in sexual liberation, feminism, and sisterhood. But I fail to see how people couldn't clearly see that this is a put-together fetish fantasy with a man at the helm of it all. No disrespect intended to the women involved. As you can tell, they gave this project their all and took it really seriously, but it was pretty clear from the start that this is a gimmick band designed to trend. For instance, the subject matter of their songs includes shagging a priest, having a wank with a piece of corn, scissoring. How is anybody taking this seriously, man? The comments of all their videos are full of gooners. The original woman playing Lilith was in fact the only woman involved in the initial recording and production of Dogma's first run of singles that would appear on their debut album. All musicianship was provided by a producer by the name of Alvaro Rabachino, with the exception of drums, which were provided by his brother Fede. By June 2023, Lilith was now the combined vocal duties of the original singer, but also a new woman who wished to remain fully anonymous. While the original woman playing the character remained the visual presentation in the music videos and promotional material, the vocals were mostly replaced. Lamia and Abrahel were also fully replaced by new members at this point. By October 2023, yet another lineup change had taken place, with the original Lilith being replaced entirely and a third drummer being brought on board. From this point onwards, across Instagram posts and tour performances, Dogma were essentially a revolving door of members with no consistent lineup, with that Reddit post I cited earlier identifying 7 separate lineups in total. For a band that have been together for around 5 years, that is absolutely ludicrous. In July 2024, a new character, Rusalka, was created to fill the role of the second guitarist, and this character would also go on to experience a member change. In that time, they've released about 11 singles with music videos, as well as one full-length album. One of these singles is a cover of Madonna's Like a Prayer. Oh my god guys, do you get it? It's because they're not. Dogma play a very cinematic, theatrical style of metal that's honestly very comparable to Ghost. There's a lot of heavy processing on pretty much everything. With everything from the look and theatrics to some of the riffs they use, there's a very clear influence from a lot of 80s glam metal, and there's some injection of symphonic and gothic metal in there as well. These influences come in combination with catchy hooks that are clearly designed to get stuck in the listener's head, giving the songs an almost pop feel in places. The vocals are oddly pop sounding considering some of the other genres on display throughout their single releases. I was fully expecting scream vocals when I went to check out their music at first, I can't lie. Dogma underwent a major touring cycle throughout the years of 2024 and 2025, playing European festivals such as Bloodstock and Wacken, and also doing North and South American tour dates as well. This tour was already heavily impacted by lineup changes and visa issues, already spelling out the band's future. So we're 4-ish years in, with a whole horde of lineup changes already. Something was bound to come out of it, the band, right? When 3 of the 5 members suddenly quit at the end of last October, after the postponing of some of the band's US tour dates, they would go on to release a joint statement on social media exposing Dogma for what it truly was. Essentially, a carefully cultivated, image-based band controlled by a management team. Not only that, but this management were allegedly mistreating, exploiting, and attempting to silence any women involved in the project, as well as misleading fans. The statement read, "The fans deserve to know the truth. We were part of Dogma. We loved this project, but what's being sold today is not Dogma. During the tours, we saw unilateral decisions, broken promises, manipulation, mistreatment, and lies to the fans. The person who now controls the project is a threat to Dogma's future, and is not an artist or a musician. He turned a band into a brand, and people into disposable pieces. He betrayed the artists, his partners, and the fans. Dogma was born from the connection, from the music, from the stories we shared with you. Replacing people without honesty isn't who we are. Dogma is meant to push the ideals of freedom and liberation, none of which can exist without integrity and honesty towards the fans and everyone involved in the project. We don't want to see more fans deceived, spending their money and devotion on something hollow. The real Dogma stands here, with those who created that connection for real. But the power isn't in our hands. It's in yours. It always has been. You decide who deserves to keep the music alive. No manager can control that. Make your voice heard. Don't support a lie. On the social networks, the name Official Dogma no longer represents the real band or what we stand for. Demand transparency. Ask for refunds if you weren't given what you were promised. Don't let anyone manipulate you. Also, no more masks. Masks were meant to protect the identity, not to replace people. The only one who needs to take the mask off is him. The power to change this story starts with your support. We will keep going. The music, the creativity, and the truth are on our side. We put our souls into this project, and that's why you were able to connect with us. No manager should be able to strip that away." While signed as their characters' names, the members who made this statement were vocalist Grace Jane Pastorini and guitarist Amber Maldonado and Patrick Grief. This sent the Dogma fanbase into a frenzy, with the comments proving a breeding ground for speculation, but also largely voicing support to the three women for stepping forward. Whoever was running the Official Dogma Instagram account was quick to notice and responded with a lengthy statement that was just a whole lot of nothing really. It was just words, didn't really confirm or deny anything. Comments turned off, of course. Patrick Grief, who played Rusalka, gave more context in a further Instagram statement a couple days later. She spoke about how when she was contacted to join the project in 2023, she immediately fell in love with the concept of the project and the character of Rusalka, and stressed that she had injected a lot of her personal journey and spirit into playing her. The character's Instagram account had been used to connect with and oftentimes even help fans out, while Grief was playing her and had control of the platform. Yet the character and her social media had been abruptly snatched from Grief, following her rejection from admission into the United States of America. It's going to become pretty clear in a few minutes how this particular event was a catalyst for shit hitting the fan. Grief also spoke of feeling from the start that things were quote off with the management of the band, but pushed her feelings aside because she had used music as a refuge growing up and felt the need to do the same for others through performing, which is something that I really can resonate with heavily, and I really do feel for her. This drive to use music to help others led to Grief taking on a lot of extra duties for no payment, meeting fans at the merch table after shows, responding to any social media messages she could, and generally connecting with Dogma's audience on a deeper level than would be expected from a typical band member. This led to management coming to expect much out of her for no payment, and when she finally set a boundary in the form of refusing to let them use her equipment without permission, there was immediate friction. Her only thanks was a €100 tip and an instruction to not continue connecting with the fans in the same manner. Grief finished her statement by clarifying that ultimately, the reason she was no longer a member of Dogma was indeed the fact that she had been refused admission to the US, due to Dogma's management refusing to provide band members with appropriate work visas for the tour. When another band member had asked for the correct visa to be provided, she was immediately removed from the project, and Grief felt she had no choice but to risk entry to the US on a tourist visa, or she would be replaced. She and the new singer were then detained and interrogated for 48 hours before being sent back to South America. Perhaps most appallingly of all in this statement, when she turned her phone on upon arriving home, she had messages from Dogma's management telling her they'd found a suitable replacement and asking if she could help teach this new member the songs. When Grief expressed anger at being detained, she was met with a response that nobody had forced her to take the risk, and actually, it was all her fault because she'd been wearing a band t-shirt under her hoodie. Like, bro, what the f***? With the current political climate and everything going on with ICE, by the way. Scumbags. Grief further details some of the poor conditions of Dogma's touring, including the fact that the band were only funded for 2 meals per day, being told they were too demanding for requesting their basic needs be taken care of, gaslighting, and being punished for discussing contract conditions with other bandmates. When concerns were voiced, the band members were often met with severely misogynistic comments like, they need to to be calm, or they complain too much because they're women. Grief also accused the new member playing Rusalka of using a backing track before signing off her statement with love towards the fans. While on a personal level, I could never view a project like Dogma as a feminist one, and it's always something that has screamed fakery to me. I really empathise with Grief's care for the character she played and how insulting it must feel to feel so easily replaced after you've poured so much hard work as well as your own personality into a project in this manner. A woman who had previously auditioned for the role of Lamia but was ghosted during the audition process was then contacted to fill in for the role of Rusalka for the tour, but refused after thinking about it for a couple of hours, partially because she would be expected to use a backing track for the first couple of performances rather than actually playing. It was also heavily implied that she would only be in Dogma for the US tour dates before being booted off the project, and once again was only offered $100 a show. This was all detailed in an Instagram statement of her own. At this stage, further fuel began being added to the fire in terms of other female musicians who had been contacted by Dogma, but hadn't been as unfortunate as the women involved in joining the project. The first of these was the singer Kim Jeanette, who auditioned to become Dogma's vocalist in 2024, and was selected and flown out to South America to rehearse with the band. Jeanette immediately recognised that Dogma was a carefully manufactured, image-based project rather than a band, and was not happy that she would be playing a character anonymously, especially as she described the members were threatened legally if they ever were to speak out as themselves. Jeanette was lucky enough to have access to a lawyer who advised her that participating in the project was essentially slave labour disguised as the illusion of a dream. Having not signed anything, Jeanette was free to expose that each of the musicians involved in Dogma received roughly the equivalent of $100 a show, while management kept all the profits from meet and greets, merch sales, ticket sales, etc. An absolute joke. What is perhaps the most disturbing part of Jeanette's statement reads as follows: I urge them to add a section about basic human rights, which they immediately took back out. Protecting myself against things like sexual abuse and exploitation, allowing me rights to things such as health safety, and the right to terminate the contract if these things are breached. When I urged my human rights were non-negotiable, they backed out. Is that not one of the most insane things you've ever heard in your life? That's absolutely disgusting. Jeanette went on to say that Dogma's whole philosophy was authenticity, freedom, and expression, yet the way the band were managed and treated obviously goes against the entirety of those core values. The line in their official statement, "Dogma is bigger than one person," was true in a way that nobody saw coming at first glance. Management as priority and the band members treated as disposable. To finish her lengthy statement, Kim wrote, "I'm speaking out so people can see this for what it really is. If a brand's power relies on silence, control, and anonymity, it is not empowerment, it's exploitation." She then provided proof of the horrific conditions of the contract she didn't sign, which included granting Dogma's management ownership over her voice and likeness even after leaving, $100 per live show with no ownership of recordings and no royalties, and an instruction that the artist could be removed from the project at any time with no notice or compensation, but could not leave themselves without permission. Amber Maldonado, who played the second version of Lamia, came out with a statement of her own a few days later, clearly relieved she could finally tell her story. She had left the band due to the alleged stress being mistreated had caused her, with management supposedly constantly instigating fights regarding her work schedule for her other job. You know, the one I'd assume she was being compensated for fairly, something Dogma's management probably didn't like. Maldonado also claimed that when the band were being interviewed, the management had pre-scripted their answers using AI, which is fairly believable if you look at the captions of Dogma's Instagram posts. It was touring with Dogma that really opened her eyes to how evil the band's management was. Following spraining her ankle during a show, she was not permitted to receive proper treatment and was forced to keep performing in heels. She purchased extra necessary food for the rest of the band and crew with her own money due to management failing to provide a sufficient amount for everyone. She too was subject to manipulation tactics like gaslighting, being worn down in arguments, and day schedules for the tour not being provided to limit any freedom. Zoe Fedorov, who performed with Cradle of Filth, weighed in at one point to state she had many female musician friends who had been contacted to audition for Dogma. Lindsay Schoolcraft, also formerly of Cradle of Filth, stated the same, adding that the payoff, considering the band were going on international tours, was disgustingly low. Becky Baldwin, bassist of Merciful Fate and Hands Off Gretel, also stated that she herself had been contacted about joining the band, but realised immediately that the manner in which she was being spoken to was unprofessional and disrespectful, and therefore she declined. Vanessa Lockhart, singer of an Evanescence cover band, had also been contacted about auditioning, but quickly realised it was merely a, quote, strange marketing ploy. Excellent way of describing it, honestly. The vocalist of Absinthe Green also posted her own lengthy Instagram statement of how she had almost taken on the role of Lilith in 2022, but something had, quote, felt off from the start. She was alarmed the entire audition process was run by two men, one a well-known music manager and the other an anonymous composer, who had the final say on who joined the band. She was initially intrigued by the themes of liberation and feminism that were at the forefront of the band, being told it was centered around a group of seductive, rebellious nuns fighting against hypocrisy and control, but quickly recoiled upon seeing the lyrics that had been prepared for each song. Lyrics about edging a priest and piece of corn that she stated were clearly written from a male fantasy point of view. I am a bit shocked she was the first woman to bring this particular point up, but I digress. This vocalist stated she didn't particularly have a problem with just showing up and playing rather than having creative input in the project. Sometimes that was refreshing and a welcome change, but this felt much more exploitative and like the women involved were being pimped out. This woman was also heavily tattooed, which proved a huge issue for management, and they set to work trying to figure out how to conceal any bit of her identity that stood out, but ultimately, she thankfully didn't join the project. Of course, throughout all of these statements there's a common theme. The management at the helm of it all, who were the breeding ground for all of this problematic treatment, as well as the conditions the members were constantly subjected to. But all of it's very vague. Who were the real masters of puppets behind Dogma? The formation of Dogma can be traced back to Uruguay-based management company IDL Entertainment, founded by a man named Ian DeLeo. In February 2019, IDL Entertainment began advertising, seeking a female vocalist aged between 18 and 40. This led to the first initial casting of Lilith a few months later, who recorded vocals for the band's album. On his personal account around this time, which is now private, he can be seen composing with Alvaro Rabachino, who has been consistently credited as one of Dogma's songwriters as the Dark Messiah. Cringe. Throughout the pandemic, the band's online presence would be established. In spring 2022, a second woman would be hired to play Lilith, and the vocals for the album re-recorded. They were signed to a record company, MNRK Heavy, in March, with merch released on the website. While the music video for Father I Have Sinned was released at this time, featuring vocals and an appearance from the original Lilith, the other songwriters credited on the track are The Dark Messiah, as previously mentioned, real name Alvaro Rabachino again, The Light Messiah, an alias for Ian DeLeo, and The Dusk Messiah, for f***'s sake, speculated to be Fede Rabachino, Alvaro's brother, and a producer credited as Dark Nalabrok, speculated to be sound engineer Nassim Corbalan. These men would remain songwriters for Dogma's discography amidst all of the lineup changes, with the women involved not contributing creatively to the project at all, and frequently miming alongside backup tracks during live performances, as accused by former members. On the 17th of November 2023, Dogma would release their debut album. Fede Rabachino would upload a video to his personal Instagram, wearing Dogma merch already, and performing a drum cover of Father I Have Sinned the same day, captioning the cover with how he believed the band were going to conquer the music industry, and how he was glad he had discovered them so early on. Wow, Fede, that's very subtle of you. These men were the ones managing the band's social media accounts, and they retained ownership over each of the characters' individual Instagrams as well. These were the men manipulating women into performing under horrendous conditions, selling a sexual fantasy, and trying to bully female musicians into signing away their careers, all while claiming it under this feminist banner. I hate this so much. So from this point onwards, the story takes a couple of strange turns. I say that like it wasn't kind of weird enough already. Alvaro Rabachino, aka The Dark Messiah, would post a statement on Instagram in December 2025 when the dust had barely settled, stating a new project called Vindicta had been created with former Dogma members, with their first single now live. The main difference, according to this statement, seemed to be the emphasis that the women in the band would actually be performing and writing the music themselves from this point. He did clarify that the direction Dogma had taken was not something he had any part in, and he was no longer involved, but also admitted that he was the main composer and lyricist while involved in the project, and responsible for recording much of the instrumentation, along with his brother. He tried to place the entirety of the blame for the mismanagement of the project on Ian DeLeo, but I don't know. If you're gonna write gross sexist lyrics like that, I think you kinda deserve to cop some of the blame. Crappy statement in my opinion. The single he was announcing, The Face of the Clown, has him listed as a featured artist as he contributes vocals. Admittedly, it is better than anything Dogma ever put out, but it's not significantly different. With lyrics that seem targeted at Ian DeLeo, it remains Vindicta's only single release to date. Meanwhile, Dogma seem to be trying to make a comeback, with their new single Fate Unblinds being released just 2 months ago. It's unclear what members now remain, and honestly if the band keeps going, they're likely to get swapped out every couple of months anyway. Only time will tell, but it's hard to show support for a project so inauthentic. It's incredibly sad that the feminist movement could be co-opted in such a manner to create such a cheap marketing ploy, but it's something that continues to happen in many mediums of art. The important thing is to call it out, to show it's inexcusable, and that we as women will not stand for it. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you want to as well. I make a lot of videos about punk, rock and metal music. If that sounds like your thing, feel free to join. I would love to have you here. Do you love Dogma? Do you hate them? If you do like their gimmick and music, could you please drop a comment explaining why? I'd really love to hear your perspective. I hope you guys all had a great summer. I'm gonna be honest, the heat waves totally kicked my ass, but I did move from Bristol to London and I'm really excited about it. I'm so happy to be here. Stay safe, look after yourself. I'll catch you in another video. Bye!